Hi everyone, and welcome to this DevCon presentation. So my name is Quentin Renaud. I'm working at Algolia since 3 years now as an SRE. And if you don't know about what an SRE and what the job is about, it's a bit like a farmer. So as an SRE has a field. Here it's Kubernetes. So it's a tool that allows the farmer to grow APIs. It's building APIs and putting it in production. We have other tools. We have sometimes a truck here, Circle CI, to create all the CI/CD pipeline and everything. And also we have tools like Arco CD for irrigation to take care of the APIs to make sure they are aligned with what we want. In case something is wrong, we can reestablish or repair things. Finally, we have Datadog as CCTV camera to monitor everything and make sure we collect all metrics and create dashboard and alert about them. So that's my day-to-day life. And one day, a machine learning engineer came to me with a request. He wanted to compare hosted LLM with self-hosted one. So I asked him what part of LLM he wanted to compare, what would be the metrics, and the cost, latency, relevance, and he wanted to compare everything. So in order to understand what I needed to do, because I never touched LLM at this point, and I need to go where the ML engineer were living. And so he showed me his field. Here he was working on GCP Cloud Run. He had another truck, he had GitHub Action to build everything. And one of these APIs was connected to the sky. It was connected to OpenAI. So he wanted to compare this API with this LLM with some other. So because I didn't understand well about LLM, I wanted to understand more. And when people don't understand well things, most of the time they're going to see specialists to explain it to them. And I went to LLM market here, Hugging Face, to understand more and to choose the LLM we wanted to compare OpenAI with. So when I entered this market, I see different sellers, see the proprietary one that are quite expensive, and with that, they are the state of the art. Here we already had OpenAI, so we didn't care much about this one. Then we had the open-weight seller, where most of them are licensed, so we need to be careful how we use these models. If some are restricted to research only or other restriction. And most of the time they are 5 months late compared to the proprietary one. Finally, there is the open sellers where everything is free, but they are a bit outdated, more outdated than the open weight with 5 months late compared to the others. So in our case, we choose the open weight because we find one where the license said that we could use it in any situation. It was free to use. So we went on this solution. Then when you have chosen a model, you need to choose the size. So it's the number of parameters of the model. It could be 7B, 13 billion parameters, or 60 billion parameters. The bigger it is, the more power it needs. But it can understand also more complex prompt. In our case, we choose the smallest one. So we choose a 7 billion parameters, open weight with Mistral, where we could use it in every situation. Because it was made in EU compliant country, it respected GDPR in the way it trains. It was in the way the model was trained. Once you have chosen the model, you need to pack it and deliver it somewhere. So for that, you have many solutions possible. Here, the first one is to use a plane, is to download it at runtime. That means that every time the API will start, then it will download the model at runtime. So you have always the last state update, but it takes a lot of time at startup to download the model. The other solution is to store it in a bucket. That way you put the LLM, the model, inside the bucket in S3, AWS, or in other provider. So it's easy to access for your APIs, but you have to pay for the bucket. Finally, the last solution is to store the LLM inside the APIs, inside the container. That way it's faster to scale, but the container will be a bit bigger. So at first it will take a lot of time to download on your field, but once it's there, it can scale really quickly. That's what we used in that situation. So we had already the CI/CD ready to go. We just have to put that in a container. So here a bit schema. Here's what we wanted to do. So we had on one side the model and we wanted to put in the container. That way it's really easy to access. So we had this track like GitHub Action to build everything. Everything was ready to go. We just have to modify the Docker file here and launch the build phase. But when we did that, we had an error, the disk space error. Even if the model was the smallest one, 7B, it was still 13 gigabytes. And so they had the track here. GitHub Action had issue where had a limitation in terms of storage. And so we exceeded that. So we had to change tracks. So we ditched GitHub and we used GCP Cloud Bridge because they had bigger limitation, and we could just send the Docker file to Cloud Bridge and it works. It built it and pushed that to a registry. Now that we had our APIs and with the container, we could deploy it in our field. For that, we were ready for the first test. So the ML engineer prepared a simple prompt, "Hey LLM, what's your name?" And he sent that to OpenAI. It responded in 2 seconds, "My name is GPT." And then we sent it to Mistral 7B, our local LLM. And after 15 seconds, request was cancelled because we had this limitation and it took more than 50 seconds. So it failed. So we increased the timeout, increased it to 30 seconds, and it still failed. And then we removed completely the timeout. And after 90 seconds, we finally had the answer. My name is Mistral. So we had clearly an issue to make it go faster. For that, we had the perfect solution by watching the news, because we could use a new fertilizer for our APIs is to use GPU. We were lucky because the API was running on Cloud Run, and like GCP just released the GPU for Cloud Run. So we just clicked on the button in Cloud Run to activate the GPU. We had another issue here. There were no GPU available in our region. At first, we were in Europe West 2, and there was no GPU at this time. So we destroyed everything and recreated with Terraform to put everything in Europe West 1, what there was with GPU. Hands down, we had everything running again. We did our request, the same request as before again, and I responded the same thing. My name is GPT in 2 seconds, and on our side, Mistral responded in 7 seconds, or local LLM responded in 7 seconds. So we were ready to go deeper in the test. The first large context test we did was by using the World Factbook by CIA. The idea, so these factbooks had a lot of information. So we have this by country, and by each country you have the history, people, government, economy, energy, geography, environment, everything as a JSON. And that way you can provide that to an LLM as context and ask a question and see if it can understand the context and the prompt and make correct and relevant answer. Things to understand is that this factbook is nearly 2 million words, so it's a good text for LLM. So we ask a question. We ask a prompt. So the prompt was, can you create a business plan for a new phone operator in India specific for young people? And we send that to OpenAI with no issue. it could process everything and respond to us. In our case, we are an error. It was not a complete error. It was most a warning here, because Mistral 7B or local LLM sometimes responded to us something relevant, and sometimes didn't respond at all, or something you would hallucinate on. And in the logs, we could see this error, context exceeded, and we could see that the local LLM had a hard limitation of 8,000 tokens. And that way, because we were sending too much context, or factbook was too big, it would just truncate a part of the context, have the question and the start of the context, and then the remaining was lost. So that was the first big issue with local LLM, because we couldn't change this static limit, because the model was trained on this number of tokens. The prompt and the context size is limited by it. Another situation, we wanted to be able to test with many ML engineers. So we wanted one API for Gandalf, one API for Saruman, or another for Radagast, and another and another. So we had to create a way to duplicate these APIs in order to either test with our local LLM or OpenAI or both of them. And for that, we create something called review all, where the developer could put a label on a PR here in GitHub, could put the label review Cat Walker, for example, and it would duplicate an API just for the developer in staging, where it had his own endpoint and could interact with this API without touching the other one. And when the test was done and the PR is merged, the API will destroy himself and staging will be update with the new change. So that was a good iteration on our CI/CD to improve it. Finally, one day I had an idea. I was watching the news and I saw that a new model was released here at DeepSeek. So I created a new Docker file with DeepSeek in it, and I was ready to put that in staging. And the legal team came to me saying, no, don't do that. Because here we need to be careful about new model coming in, about where they have been trained, how they've been trained, to see if it respects GDPR. The license, we need to carefully read the license to make sure we can use it. And finally, there's bias about training, and make sure that we are using the best and the most pragmatic LLM. So that was a learning, just to not be in the cutting edge and be careful about what we are using. After a few months of experimentation, we had stability, because sometimes the LLM wouldn't answer or would crash because, for example, out of memory, we had the context limitation we saw with the factbook, and our CI/CD was not running every day to update the models. So we were a bit late on our version, and it was a bit of pain to update it. And finally, we had the latency compared to OpenAI with 2 seconds. We were still around 6 seconds, and it needed a lot of optimization to make it a bit faster. And for fixing everything, I would have to duplicate myself, because it was just a request at first. And that's where it was a breaking point into our experimentation to make the choice of either we are investing in our local LLM and put more people on that, or we just using the proprietary one. So we had to make a choice. So for that, we had one day in Mistral AI with all these characteristics of weight. We could control the number of GPU, the size of it, and the hosting here in Cloud Run. We have put that in Kubernetes or in other solution. And the other way, it's more a black box, but we pay for it, and it's efficient. So in a few words, we can compare it with a few metrics. First, cost. Here, OpenAI is quite expensive. You pay at the prompt. When you're local LLM, you pay with the resources. So if you don't want GPU, you can stay on CPU. Or if you want good performances, you can invest in a lot of GPU to improve everything. So here the local LLM is working, is winning. Then you have the latency. You need to improve a lot of things to have the same latency as OpenAI. And so definitely here for this case, the proprietary one are winning. Then we have the relevance. We had this context issue we saw, and we could have fixed that by retraining the model with a bigger bigger size limit, and to have fixed a bit the situation, or clean, for example, the context, to have less context to make sure the information was there. OpenAI accept a larger context compared to local LLM, so they're winning also on this point. Finally, there is a maintainability. We need a full team of SREs to handle local LLM, to understand the optimization, the GPU, what to choose, what was the sources to invest on, where on the other side you don't do anything, you just pay again, and it's working. And that was the main metrics that we were interested in, because in Cloud Run we thought it was just one click to have GPU and make it easy to use, but we found out this mini issue, and that's why at the end, if you don't have the team to invest in, and you want something like quick and just want to experiment and have it to focus on your logic and not optimizing LLM, then the proprietary one are a good solution. On the other hand, if you want to grow and understand more about LLM and maybe train it yourself, here the local LLM are surely the best. Thank you very much.